The Dallas Cowboys, America's Game of the Week, called by Kurt Burkhardt and Tom Brady, was not what I expected. Of course, I think you all know that I predicted that the Dallas Cowboys would possibly lose this game, but it was the exact complete opposite. What should we take away from the Cowboys' performance yesterday? Let's just go ahead and start off with what the elephant in the room is, what everybody in the media knows, and there is no surprise to this aspect of the Dallas Cowboys. It's their offense. But first, I have to say on top of that, this is the best overall performance that the Cowboys have had all year up to this point. It was better than Philly, even though Philly, you can argue, better team. But at this point in the season, week 7, that performance that Dallas put on yesterday was the best all-around performance that they've put up. And let's just start with the offense. This offense is absolutely phenomenal. It is no doubt in my mind the best offense in the NFL. When you have the wide receiver duo like George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, it's not Batman and Robin. And I give kudos to one of the guys who said this in a tweet that I saw yesterday who covered the Dallas Cowboys. They were like, when it comes to George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, you're not getting Batman and Robin. You're literally getting Batman and Superman. There's no 1A, there's no 1 and 2 here. You have 1A and then you have 1B. In George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Statistically, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb had 5 catches for 110 yards. George Pickens had 4 for 82. It seems like, and we haven't been able to see it since, the first couple of games of the season, having CeeDee Lamb out there on the other side of George Pickens just makes the offense just 10 times more unpredictable. Because we've seen over the last couple of weeks with CeeDee Lamb being out, we've not been able to see that go ball that George Pickens, that's his bread and butter. George Pickens has been running more of CeeDee Lamb's routes when it comes to slants, crossers, and things of that nature. But we saw yesterday, CeeDee Lamb was running those crossers. So now the Cowboys have the threat of the long ball and is able to stretch the field because of George Pickens. And we know how elite George Pickens is at that style of play. And he is able to open up the field for just Dak Prescott and just keeping the defense guessing. And we saw that yesterday. And again, another element of the offense as well. Dak Prescott is continuing to pile up phenomenal games. I think in the last 4 games, he's now thrown 14 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And also, the running game was back, which is a focal point that I discussed in last week's show on Friday. I was like, we saw what Washington was able to allow DeAndre Swift to do. You should be able to get a get-right game in the run after the future performance they put up last week against the Carolina Panthers. And that was put on display as well, with Javonte Williams getting a buck 16 on 19 carries for averaging 6 yards per carry, and he got a touchdown and a long run of 33. And if you sprinkled in Jayden Blue just a little bit in there at the end, he was able to produce some as well. The negative in the offense specifically, from what I saw, was the lack of pass protection in this game because of the furious D-line that the Washington Commanders have. And it is their strength to the defense of the Dallas Cowboys. You had Tyler Booker. He's been out for the last 3-4 weeks. I want to say 3 weeks. And he was getting back in there, plugged him in at right guard. So I wasn't happy with the protection. And that has been something that has been the Dallas Cowboys' strong suit to start out this year. But I believe with the addition of Tyler Booker, get right game, because that's where most of the pressure was coming from, was the interior of the offensive line. But I think that would be better going on into the future. But that is the offense. There is no surprise of what happened yesterday offensively. Going into this game, I thought we were going to have a shootout. I knew Dallas was going to score points, but now we're going to get to the point that I was shocked about. Let's talk about the defense. The defense, yes, they played well yesterday. There is no doubt about it. I'm not refuting it. They played phenomenal. It is the best defensive performance they've come up with so far this season. Yes, it was better than the Jets. Absolutely better than the Jets. And even, they did it only for a half in week 1 against Philly. But for 4 straight quarters, this is the best defensive performance that they've put up. Granted, it comes with a stimulus package. I'm not buying into what Dallas put on display on defense yesterday. Because of this main reason, you can roll your eyes at me, but I do not care. It is the cold-hearted truth. I watched this game for 3.5 hours. Because this, and mind y'all, this was a very long game for some reason. Was I the only one that was watching and I was sitting there like, why does it feel like this game is taking forever? That late window yesterday specifically was like so long. And I was sitting there like, what is going on? Why are these games so long? Anyways, I digress. One little nugget there. But if you watched the game yesterday, specifically by the Commanders' on offense, they had all of their receivers out to begin with. They didn't have Deebo Samuel. They didn't have Noah Brown, which is not saying much. Noah Brown is not your break-all wide receiver. But, Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin, your 1-2 combo in Washington, that is a big deal going out of the game. And I even tweeted on Twitter, I'm like, dude, because they ruled Deebo out, was it Saturday? And I was like, there's no reason why the Cowboys should lose this game. But the number one receiving target yesterday for the Commanders was Jalen Lane. Never heard of the guy. Nothing against him. He actually got 3 catches for 60 yards. But they didn't have all their receivers. There were a lot of drop balls, and there were a lot of misfires. Give credit to Matt Eberflus. Got to give a whole lot of credit to Matt Eberflus. He went away from the zone, and he done a lot of blitzing and man coverage yesterday. And what finally happened in yesterday's game? Dallas was able to get somewhat of a consistent pass rush. Somewhat. Not to what I would like it to be. I'm sure not what they would like it to be. And what the general media would like it to be. But watching the game, you were able to play man coverage. And you were able to get pressure on Jayden Daniels. And it was making Jayden Daniels have to move away from his spot and where he wants to throw the ball off axis. And that's just how you were getting the misfires and etc. that I was talking about before. So give credit where credit is due to the defense. Now, if I am Matt Eberflus, you got to continue to rely on this formula because of the personnel that you have. We've said it before. The time that Trayvon Diggs has been there and the time that DaRon Bland has been there, they have never been zone corners. They have been your man-to-man type corner. And let's give a shout-out to DaRon Bland, who has been getting a lot of crap by everybody in Cowboys media so far this year. He was phenomenal yesterday. Absolutely phenomenal. If DaRon Bland, if we are able to get Sharon Revel and Trayvon Diggs to get on some, well, specifically if Sharon Revel, if he plays this year, I kind of don't want Dallas to rush him just because of how do I want to word this? How important he is to the Cowboys' future. Like, this guy has bona fide Pro Bowler, second All-Pro type talent in him right now, in the future. I don't want the Cowboys to possibly jeopardize that and come back from that ACL injury by trying to push him to play this season, unless the Cowboys have a shot later on in the season where they're continuing to make a case for making a playoff push. But even with that, if he's a piece that you can plug in later, let him be that later on in the season. But for right now, you have DaRon Bland, you have Trayvon Diggs. Let's lean into that play style. And with the linebackers, they were able to blitz. They were able to play without thinking yesterday. Even though in the first touchdown that they gave up, there was a little zone between Shamar James and Kenneth Murray. They screwed that up, little communication issue. But yesterday, they were able to play free. They were able to fly around, and it was put on display on tape yesterday. And they were able to get 3 and outs, and they were able to force 2 turnovers. Do you see what we've been talking about? Matt Eberflus. You got to be able to call a game based on your personnel. You don't have the personnel to drop back and play coverage because you cannot get a pass rush. And they were able to do that yesterday. What else do we have here? That's pretty much it that I have about Dallas. And this is something that we can continue to talk when it comes to Dallas that I've brought up last week. The what if. Because the Dallas Cowboys have the best offense in the NFL. They have a Super Bowl worthy offense. Not even close. This is the best offense in Dak Prescott's career that he has assembled and been a part of and commanded by a long shot. And it's not even close. But if you look at the defensive side of the ball, it's like, really, what if? What if you were able to get one piece in the trade deadline? What if you would have never had to have traded Micah Parsons? It always is a what if, but if you wouldn't have traded Micah Parsons, you would have never had Kenny Clark. There's just so many what ifs on this roster to where one bodes the question, can Dallas make a move at the deadline? I don't know, y'all. Watching yesterday, I really do think the Cowboys might be a good pass rusher away from being pretty good on defense. I like the defensive performance they put on tape yesterday because I trust the offense to be able to get 27, 30 points. If your defense can even do remotely resemble what they did yesterday, the Cowboys will be able to win some games. They can be scary. But again, I don't want to harp on this defensive performance yet because they got a big game next week. We got Denver this weekend. That is going to be a huge litmus test. We saw what we were going to discuss the Broncos later. I'm not going to, spoil it. But we saw what the Denver Broncos were able to put on tape yesterday. And we know that Bo Nix is able to run the ball, and that has always been the Dallas Cowboys' Achilles heel. So that's a lot to be desired. But let's move on to some Commanders, okay? I kind of got caught up in the Commanders hype last year. Going into this season, I was like, okay, you added Deebo Samuel, another element to your offense. And, defensively, they were actually pretty good last year. But, man, so far this year, their defense has been absolutely abysmal. They're not good. They got a good front line, and they are able to get to the quarterback. But that back end, specifically Marshawn Lattimore, he looked washed. Granted, he had pretty good coverage on a couple of balls that were through to George Pickens. That was just George Pickens being great. But I don't like what they have on the back end. Dallas were pretty much able to do whatever they wanted to do yesterday at the receiving core. They don't stop the run well. And it's a huge question mark. And, Jayden Daniels' mom said it yesterday on Twitter about, don't wish this on my son, but it is the God's honest truth. Jayden Daniels' health is going to continue to be a problem for the rest of his career. What was it last year? Last year, it was a rib injury. This year so far, it was his knee. And now he's done something to his hamstring. Your best, and this is the bread and butter quote in the NFL. Your best ability is your availability. Jayden Daniels so far, through the first couple years of his career, has not been available. And he's back-to-back seasons, this is where he's not going to play roughly 15-plus games. That is not a good recipe to see if you're a Washington Commander fan in your sophomore quarterback. And don't get me wrong, Jayden Daniels was part of the reason why that I was buying into the Commanders' hype because of how prolific that he can be. I don't think Jayden Daniels was good yesterday. I mean, he was average, 12 for 22, 156, one touchdown, no picks. There's not much I could take away from that performance because of he did not have a run game. You could tell he didn't have rapport with the receivers because there was a lot of miscommunication going on and a lot of misfired throws. But he's been pretty banged up. And defensively, and going on for the rest of the season, I trust more of the Giants being better and finishing out better than I do the Commanders. Because the Commanders' next couple games are absolutely brutal. Their next fleet of games, I heard Colin talk about it earlier, but you got Kansas City, Detroit, Seattle in your next 3 games. You still got to play Denver, you got to play Minnesota, you got to play Philly, and you got to play Dallas again. Their schedule, and even though the Giants have one too, is absolutely brutal. But I trust more, specifically on how the Giants looked yesterday, and we're fixing to get into them. I trust them more going forward than I do the Commanders. I think the Commanders are going to finish 3rd and 4th in their division. I just think, as John Middlecoff and Colin Cowherd put it last night, I think the magic has run out. I just don't think they have the personnel defensively. And if they were even remotely at their peak offensively like they were against the Chargers, their Achilles heel in the end is going to be their defense because they are not good. And that is simply put. But it was a phenomenal game for the Dallas Cowboys. Got a big one going up against the Denver Broncos. Going up this coming up week. And it is going to be a huge litmus test. If the Dallas Cowboys get a win, who knows? It may be in Jerry Jones' best interest to maybe seek an edge rusher. Bradley Chubb, Miami selling. A lot of people's throwing around the name Max Crosby. We're just going to have to wait and see how it all plans out. And the Washington Commanders, the season is starting to nosedive pretty fast.